is September 2025, inside a military courtroom in Maiduguri. A Nigerian army sergeant steps forward, uniform pressed, eyes fixed straight ahead, as a panel of senior officers reads out charges that sound impossible for someone in his position. According to the Nigerian Army's public statements, he is accused of stealing ammunition, unlawfully dealing in arms, and aiding the enemy. This is Sergeant Raphael Ame, an armorer whose job was to safeguard weapons meant for the war against Boko Haram and ISWAP. But military investigators say he did the opposite. For years, large quantities of ammunition disappeared from the stockpile he controlled. Investigators traced 45.7 million naira flowing into his bank account, far beyond what a Nigerian sergeant could legally earn. In September 2025, he and 3 other soldiers were convicted in Maiduguri. 3 received life sentences, 1 received 15 years. The army publicly announced the convictions and said they were part of a wider crackdown known as Operation Snowball, a nationwide investigation into security personnel accused of selling weapons to criminals and insurgents. By the military's own count, 33 security operatives, including soldiers and police officers, had been arrested. But Operation Snowball didn't just expose individual corruption now. It revealed something deeper, a broken system that makes our security vulnerable. Now, I want to show you how these traitors got caught, but more importantly, why this happened in the first place. This is the story of Operation Snowball. To understand how weapons slip out of Nigeria's military stockpiles, you first need to understand how those stockpiles are managed. Across many Nigerian army formations, weapons and ammunition are still logged manually, on paper, not digital systems. Military officials themselves have acknowledged this weakness. In 2025, the Director General of the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons warned publicly that poor armory management within security agencies contributes to the proliferation of weapons across the country. This is the environment in which Sergeant Raphael Ame operated. According to testimony and evidence presented at his court-martial, investigators found that registers meant to track ammunition appeared to have been falsified. Ammunition recorded as expended in training exercise had in reality disappeared. And over roughly 2 years, 45.7 million naira entered Ame's bank account in transactions investigators classified as suspicious. At his trial, prosecutors argued that the money was payment for ammunition diverted to criminal networks. The army did not publish the exact quantities allegedly stolen, so any precise figures remain unverified. But the case against him did not stand alone. It was part of a wider network that the military said it uncovered under Operation Snowball. Now, among those arrested in this case were Inspector Enoch Ngwa, a mobile police officer accused of helping move weapons across checkpoints. Investigators traced 135 million naira through his own account. And then there is Sergeant Saidi Adamu, another armorer serving in Jos with 34 million naira in suspicious inflows. Lance Corporal Patrick Ocheje, accused of diverting a colleague's rifle during communal violence. And there is Corporal Omitoye Rufus, accused of selling ammunition to a police officer. In September 2025, the army announced that these soldiers, that is Ame, Musa, Ocheje, and Rufus, have been tried and sentenced. However, what investigators did not say publicly was just as important. They did not release the total number of weapons diverted, the destinations of the stolen items, or the exact operational damage caused by these security breaches. But independent reporting by Reuters and Premium Times noted that the army itself linked arms diversion to Nigeria's worsening insecurity, and that weapons diverted from official stockpiles often resurfaced in the hands of jihadists and bandit groups. While investigators did not publicly detail how these weapons moved or which groups ultimately received them, it is believed that Nigeria's fragmented weapons economy, which is fueled by corruption, poverty, and demand from multiple armed actors, creates pathways through which diverted arms can travel far from their origin. Now, what is undeniable is this. A system built on paper records and inconsistent oversight made this diversion possible. Operation Snowball revealed that armorers, police officers, and intermediaries could exploit that system for profit. And the army itself admitted the scale was bigger than just one man. They believed they were uncovering a network, one that is not only responsible for weapons trafficking, but for something far worse. It is November 2025, somewhere in Borno State, Nigeria's long-tormented northeast. A convoy belonging to the Nigerian army moves along a familiar route near Wajiroko, close to Damboa. At its head is Brigadier General Musa Uba, a senior commander in the fight against ISWAP, one of the most dangerous jihadist factions in West Africa. What happens next becomes one of the most unsettling military losses of the year. According to senior military sources cited in multiple outlets, the convoy was returning from operations when it was ambushed by ISWAP fighters. The attack was devastating enough that initial military statements were contradictory. At first, denying that the general had even been captured before later confirming his death. ISWAP, through its media channels, released a video claiming to show General Uba moments before his execution. Days later, tributes from Nigeria's president and senior commanders confirmed the news. The general had been killed. These facts are public, they are verified. But what remains unanswered is how the ambush happened the way it did. Several reports confirm that some Nigerian military officers privately suspected that the attackers had advanced knowledge of the convoy's movements. Now, the route itself was not unusual. Military commanders regularly travel to and from frontline positions. But the precision of this attack raised concerns inside the army. Well, how did ISWAP locate the general after the initial attack? Here, the reporting becomes even more troubling. According to Reuters, after the initial ambush, General Uba managed to communicate with his base by phone, sharing his live location and requesting rescue. Multiple officers who spoke to the press said they believed this information may have been compromised, leaked, or intercepted, allowing insurgents to reach him way before reinforcement could. The Nigerian army did not publicly confirm the mechanism of the breach, but they did confirm the outcome. ISWAP reached the general first. This points to one possibility, and that is communication vulnerability. Over the years, ISWAP and Boko Haram have seized military equipment during attacks, including radios, vehicles, and encrypted devices. Nigerian commanders have acknowledged this publicly in multiple briefings. Security analysts have long warned that insurgents, through captured radios or outside assistance, may be able to monitor certain communications. That possibility alone is enough to raise alarms, especially when a senior officer's live location is involved. This does not mean insurgents accessed WhatsApp encryption. There is no evidence for that. But it does mean that Nigerian communications procedures, especially under fire, may be vulnerable to tracking through other means such as captured devices, compromised intermediaries, unsecure radios, or relay leaks from human sources. Nothing in this scenario has been publicly proven, but the suspicion itself came from serving officers. The alternative explanation raised by officers is even more disturbing. A possibility that someone inside the security apparatus may have informed ISWAP about the general's movements. This is not unprecedented. You see, in 2016, following a deadly Boko Haram attack in Gashiga, Nigerian military intelligence arrested a major and a captain for allegedly leaking troop movements and operational plans to insurgents. Media reports at the time said the officers passed, quote, vital information to the enemy through civilian intermediaries. Well, their cases never became full public trials, but they have been repeatedly cited in academic studies on Nigeria's security crisis as proof of deep internal compromise. There is no confirmed evidence linking an insider leak to General Uba's ambush, but the pattern, that is soldiers and officers feeding information to insurgents, is well documented, and it shapes the way many in the military interpreted Uba's death. Now, another important point we need to look at is, how did the military respond? After ISWAP released the execution video, Nigeria's army leadership condemned the killing publicly. President Bela called Uba a hero, but beyond tributes, there was little public information about the investigation into how the general was located so quickly. That means no official report has been released, no suspects named, no communications breach confirmed. Yet, inside the armed forces, according to multiple sources, the death of Brigadier General Uba intensified a long-standing fear that militants are not out maneuvering soldiers. Sometimes they are being guided. Across Nigeria's conflict zones, reports of internal compromise have become frequent. Soldiers arrested for supplying ammunition to bandit groups. Police officers caught transporting weapons across state lines. Informants embedded inside units, tipping off criminals before raids. These are not allegations from fringe sources. They come from official arrests, press briefings, and court martials. But does that mean we have some elements within the military that are sabotaging the war on terror? November 17, 2025, Kebbi State, in Nigeria's northwest, a region caught between old rural quiet and a wave of kidnappings that has transformed daily life. It is some minutes just before dawn. Gunmen stormed Government Girls Comprehensive Secondary School, MAGA, killing a vice principal and a security guard and abducting 25 schoolgirls. Their ages range from early teens downward. The attack lasts for minutes. By the time local responders gather, the gunmen are already gone, disappearing into the forest on motorcycles. This alone is horrifying, but what happened before the attack is what shook the country. According to some sources, state officials had received intelligence that schools were at heightened risk of attack. In response, a military detachment was deployed specifically to guard the school. Parents were told their daughters were safe. For several days, soldiers remained on site. Then, just a few hours before the kidnappers struck, the troops left. The governor of Kebbi State, Nasir Idris, confirmed to reporters that the detachment had indeed been withdrawn shortly before the raid. He said he wanted answers from the military about who ordered the withdrawal and why. This admission from a sitting governor triggered national outrage. The Nigerian army did not disclose the operational reasoning behind the withdrawal. In fact, they described it as, quote, a routine changeover. But the timing immediately became the focus of public scrutiny because the attackers seemed to know exactly when the school was unprotected. The raid was described by witnesses as swift and organized. The government moved from building to building with confidence, selecting girls and leaving without a firefight or intervention. Now, while none of this proves insider collusion, it raised a question that Nigerians have asked too many times. How did the attackers know the exact window when troops would not be there? Now, hang on. Let's study the patterns from other communities.
This thing is coming too much. Nobody there anymore. There's nobody.
Across northern Nigeria, similar stories have surfaced for years. Villagers reported that military checkpoints were abandoned hours before bandits arrived. Patrols diverted from their routes on the same night terrorists launched raids. Communities calling for help while attackers operate freely for hours. Many of these accounts come from interviews conducted by journalists, civil society groups, and local leaders. They do not prove coordination between insiders and attackers, but the consistency of the pattern has fueled suspicion. Could these incidents be coincidences? Could this be the result of overstretched forces, operational miscommunication, or simple timing? What is most worrying is that Nigeria's insecurity often follows suspiciously predictable rhythms. Attackers seem to repeatedly strike at moments when state protection is at its thinnest. There is no official confirmation of collusion in the Kebbi school attack again. But what is confirmed is this: soldiers were deployed based on intelligence, and soldiers were withdrawn shortly before the attack. Whatever you make of that, I'll leave it to you. And the attackers, we can confirm they struck immediately after those withdrawals. Those three facts alone are enough to raise serious questions. Within days of the kidnapping, Nigerian security forces launched search operations. Local vigilantes joined the effort. Helicopters patrolled the forests of Kebbi, Zamfara, and Niger states. Eventually, most of the girls were found and rescued. But the trauma remains for the families and for the nation watching the same nightmare repeat over and over again. The kidnappings of schoolgirls are no longer random events in Nigeria. They are slowly becoming normal, a part of a long pattern stretching from Chibok in 2014 to Kankara in 2020 to Dapchi, Jangebe, Tengina, Benin, Yauri, and now Maga. And almost every time, one question lingers: why were the attackers able to operate so freely? For many Nigerians, the Maga school kidnapping is not an isolated case. It represents a deeper structural failure, a system where gaps in protection emerge at exactly the wrong time. Some interpret this as poor coordination, communication failures, or lack of resources, while others, especially those living in the villages hit the hardest, they quietly ask whether someone, somewhere, is clearing the way. Because when you look at enough of these incidents side by side, one unsettling pattern appears. The state's absence is often the attacker's opportunity, which brings us to the system enabling this security failure. If you want to understand why soldiers betray their country, you have to step back from individual cases and look at the architecture around them, the system they operate in. Corruption inside a military doesn't appear out of nowhere. It grows in the gaps where oversight is weak, where accountability disappears, and where survival becomes more personal than patriotic. For years now, Nigeria's security system has contained exactly those gaps. Let's start with something simple and publicly documented. A Nigerian private earns roughly 49,000 naira per month. That is around $30 at 2025 exchange rates. And a sergeant earns around 60,000 naira. These figures appear consistently in Nigerian media reporting, salary summaries, and civil service data. On paper, there are allowances meant to supplement this. But in practice, soldiers frequently complain that allowances arrive late or not at all. Field bonuses are inconsistent, and equipment shortages make their work even harder. These complaints aren't rumors. They are well documented in interviews published in several investigative outlets over the last decade. So, when a soldier making the equivalent of $30 to $40 a month suddenly sees a chance to earn several times that by selling a box of ammunition, well, the moral calculus becomes dangerous. Not justified, but understandable. To understand the frustration that runs through Nigeria's military, you have to revisit the major corruption scandal uncovered in 2015, a scandal that reshaped public confidence in the armed forces. A Presidential Investigative Committee reviewed arms procurement from 2007 to 2015, and they found that billions of dollars allocated for weapons were diverted through fraudulent contracts. Some of the monies were paid to shell companies with equipment often never delivered. These findings were announced publicly by Nigeria's government. The investigation linked much of the mismanagement to the office of the then National Security Advisor, Sambo Dasuki, whose responsibilities included approving arms purchases. Court filings and EFCC reports detailed payments sent abroad without documentation, contracts awarded without proof of delivery, and procurement processes bypassed entirely. Well, Dasuki, of course, denied wrongdoing, but he was arrested in 2015, detained for several years, and charged with misappropriating funds. His trial has moved slowly, and he was eventually released, but the allegations remain among the largest corruption claims in Nigerian military history. This is not speculation. It is part of the public record. And while this was happening, something else was happening far from Abuja's offices. During these same years, soldiers in Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa told journalists they were being sent into battle with inadequate ammunition, without functioning armored vehicles, without protective gear, and sometimes without food allowances. There were several documented interviews where frontline troops said they felt abandoned. One event captured the tension clearly. In May 2014, soldiers in Maiduguri opened fire into the air in protest after dozens of their colleagues were killed in a Boko Haram ambush. Their anger was directed at their commanding general, whom they accused of sending them out with poor equipment. They were court-martialed. Some were sentenced to death, later commuted. Others received long prison terms. However, the generals accused of mismanaging equipment procurement did not face comparable consequences. This contrast, harsh punishment at the bottom while there is leniency at the top, became a symbol of the system's imbalance. Dozens of officers were named in the arms procurement investigations. Some were charged. Some quietly returned funds through plea arrangements, according to EFCC statements cited in Nigerian media reports. But here is what matters. No top-ranking general has been convicted. That fact is a matter of public record. Meanwhile, the war continued, and budgets kept rising. Nigeria's defense spending grew significantly. 443 billion naira in 2016, 840 plus billion naira by 2021. Budget documents and public finance summaries confirm these figures. Yet, for many Nigerians and for many soldiers, the question remained the same. Why hasn't the security situation improved at the same pace? In 2021, researchers writing in African Affairs published a study based on interviews with Nigerian frontline soldiers. Their conclusion was stark. Quote, many soldiers believe the war is being prolonged because it benefits certain elites. This is not an allegation against any specific individual. It is a documented sentiment within the rank and file. The researchers described soldiers who believed ambushes succeeded because the enemy had inside information. There are troops who suspected informants within their own units, and their widespread frustration at corruption that drained morale. In fact, the quote that stood out came from a soldier deployed in the Northeast. He said, quote, "We are dying for nothing while they are chopping money." Well, when a war becomes profitable for a few, it becomes endless for everyone else. And this is where Operation Snowball fits into the larger story. Because what investigators uncovered in 2025 was not a collection of isolated betrayals. It was a symptom of a system in which weapons leak from armories, communication protocols can collapse, underpaid soldiers face extraordinary temptation, and corrupt actors exploit war as a business model. Of course, not everyone participates, not even most, but the system does not have to be universally corrupt to be catastrophically vulnerable. All it takes is a small breach, a signature on a form, a missing audit, an unchecked register, and weapons meant for national security start flowing toward national insecurity. This is the environment that produced Operation Snowball. This is the context in which armorers, police officers, and intermediaries navigated their choices. And it is the system that millions of Nigerians rely on for their safety. In the end, the true cost of military compromise isn't measured in bank transfers, seized weapons, or court-martial verdicts. It is measured in lives. In the empty desks at schools that should be full. In villages abandoned because the night has become too dangerous. It is measured in soldiers who don't come home. Across Nigeria's conflict zones, the Northeast, the Northwest, the Middle Belt, violence leaves a human trail that no statistic can fully capture. Reliable monitoring groups such as ACLED, Nigeria Security Tracker, and international agencies have documented thousands of deaths each year from insurgency, banditry, and communal attacks. They have also recorded a staggering rise in mass kidnappings, children taken from schools, travelers seized on highways, entire communities held for ransom. These numbers vary by year, but what never changes is the reality behind them. Families shattered, futures cut short, a country forced to grieve again and again. Nigerian officials and researchers have repeatedly warned that diverted weapons fuel both terrorism and banditry. It is a cycle that strengthens the groups Nigeria is desperately trying to defeat, while weakening the very institutions meant to protect the population. The military has never released a full accounting of how many attacks can be linked to diverted ammunition. No government agency has offered a precise number, but the pattern is unmistakable. Every bullet that leaves an armory through corruption enters a conflict through violence. And there is another cost, quieter, but just as dangerous. When soldiers arrive too late, or not at all, when attackers move as if they know the terrain better than the people who live there, when communities warn of threats but feel unheard, something begins to fray between the people and the state. Yeah, trust. Across northern Nigeria, community leaders interviewed by journalists often say the same thing. They no longer know whether to rely on the federal security forces or to depend entirely on themselves. This is why calls for state police, regional security forces, and local vigilante structures have become louder. Not because people reject the idea of a unified national military, but because they fear the existing system cannot always be counted on. There is also a cost that does not show up on maps or in reports. A generation of Nigerian children is growing up with a different understanding of safety. Some have watched armed men walk through their dormitories. Some have seen their villages raided. Some have learned to sleep lightly because nightfall brings uncertainty. Those who return from captivity, they carry trauma that lingers long after the headlines fade. Those who don't return leave wounds a family never truly recovers from. For soldiers, the betrayal cuts even deeper. When a soldier falls in an ambush enabled by stolen ammunition, when informants compromise operations, when under-equipment leaves troops exposed, it is not just a tactical failure. It is a breach of the bond that holds armies together. Soldiers enter battle knowing they may die, but they do not expect their own institution to put them at avoidable risks. The death of Brigadier General Musa Uba became a symbol of this fear. Not because the cause of his ambush has been proven, but because it felt like the embodiment of something many in the military already sensed. The enemy is not always in the forest. Sometimes the enemy is inside the system. And once trust breaks, everything else falls with it.